Britain just witnessed something that wasn't supposed to happen, a Prime Minister. Forced out, not by voters, not by his party, but by the Supreme Court. In the last 48 hours, Keir Starmer's government collapsed in a way that political scientists are calling unprecedented. The nation's highest court delivered a ruling so severe that resignation became his only option. And what came next has thrown the UK into a constitutional crisis that's still unfolding right now. This story has more layers than anyone realises. Hit subscribe because what I'm about to reveal gets darker with every hour. Here's what happened. For weeks, rumours circulated inside Westminster about a brewing legal conflict. Sources close to the judiciary were whispering about constitutional violations, about decisions made behind closed doors, about warnings ignored. Then came Tuesday morning, the Supreme Court announced an emergency session. No warning, no press briefing, just a single statement. Judgment will be delivered at noon. When those words went public, panic spread through Downing Street like wildfire. Senior advisors started making calls. Cabinet ministers cleared their schedules. Opposition leaders sensed blood in the water. At exactly 12:03 p.m, the court released its verdict, and it was devastating. The ruling accused Starmer's government of bypassing parliamentary scrutiny on multiple occasions, of concealing critical reports from oversight committees, of undermining judicial independence through political pressure. But here's what made it fatal. The court didn't just criticise, it declared the Prime Minister's actions a breach of constitutional duty. That phrase, breach of constitutional duty, is legal language with teeth. It's the kind of accusation no leader survives. Within minutes, phones across Westminster exploded, civil servants froze, MPs started drafting statements, and inside number 10, reality hit hard. There was no way out, but the Supreme Court ruling was just the beginning. Because as journalists started digging, a more disturbing truth emerged. Leaked documents revealed that senior members of Starmer's cabinet had known about the legal confrontation for weeks. They'd been warned. They'd been briefed, and they chose to stay silent. One leaked email sent from a senior legal advisor to the Cabinet Office put it bluntly, we are walking into a constitutional minefield. The courts will not tolerate this. That email was dated 3 weeks before the ruling. 3 weeks of silence, 3 weeks of keeping Parliament, the public, and even backbench MPs in the dark. When that leak hit the press, the LabourParty imploded. Accusations flew. Factions formed overnight. MPs who had stood by Starmer just days earlier were now calling his leadership the most deceptive in modern history. Shadow ministers resigned. Advisors leaked private conversations. Allies became enemies in real time. One veteran MP told reporters, we've gone from a governing party to a crime scene in 48 hours. The fury wasn't just internal. Outside Parliament, protests erupted. Thousands gathered, demanding accountability. Some celebrated Starmer's downfall. Others demanded arrests. Social media exploded with hashtags, conspiracy theories, and calls for a general election. Britain was fracturing fast. Then came the part nobody saw coming. The monarchy. King Charles said nothing publicly, but behind the scenes, sources reported something extraordinary. Private conversations between senior royal advisors and judicial figures, discussions about protecting constitutional stability, concerns about the Prime Minister's actions. Now, to be clear, the palace denied any interference, but in a constitutional monarchy, silence is its own message. And the fact that these conversations allegedly happened at all reveals how serious this crisis became. One senior constitutional expert told the BBC, if Buckingham Palace is talking to the Supreme Court, even informally, it means the foundations of government are shaking. And they were. Because while Starmer tried to hold his position, pressure mounted from every direction. Judges, rebels, the public, and now whispers suggested quiet concern from the Crown. By Wednesday evening, it became clear. Starmer had no power left, no authority, no allies willing to defend him. The system had turned. At 6:47 p.m, Keir Starmer stepped in front of cameras outside Downing Street. His voice was steady, but his eyes told a different story. After careful consideration, he began, and in light of the Supreme Court's ruling, I have decided that I can no longer serve as Prime Minister. The words landed like a shockwave. Britain's fourth Prime Minister in 3 years, gone. Not because of scandal, not because of policy failure, but because the judiciary declared him unfit to lead. Opposition leaders immediately demanded a general election, but the Labour Party was in no position to campaign. Leadership contenders emerged overnight, each promising to restore trust, even as their own involvement in the crisis remained unclear. The Conservative Party seized the moment, calling the collapse a failure of Labour's judgment and integrity. The Liberal Democrats demanded a full inquiry, and smaller parties warned that without immediate elections, Britain risked sliding into deeper instability. But here's the terrifying part. Nobody knew who was actually in charge. With Starmer gone and no successor appointed, Britain entered a constitutional grey zone. The Cabinet Office tried to coordinate government functions, but authority had dissolved into ambiguity. National security officials quietly raised concerns about gaps in emergency response structures. Economic advisers warned that markets were reacting to the chaos. The pound fell. Investor confidence wavered. Business leaders sent frantic messages demanding reassurance, but there was nothing to offer. No stable leadership, no clear direction. Just a nation in freefall. Then, Thursday afternoon, something leaked that changed everything. A confidential memo from the Cabinet Office, marked urgent, outlined 3 contingency plans being discussed behind closed doors. Option 1, immediate general election. Option 2, temporary cross-party caretaker government. Option 3, constitutional directive requesting the monarch to appoint an interim prime minister with parliamentary consent. None of these options had been publicly acknowledged. The leak confirmed what many feared. The crisis had entered a phase where normal political processes were no longer sufficient. Within hours, the memo went viral, hashtags exploded, protests intensified, pro-election groups rallied outside Parliament chanting for democracy. Opponents argued the nation was too unstable for a campaign. Every political figure came under scrutiny. Every silence was interpreted as guilt. And the question on everyone's mind remained unanswered: what happens next? By Friday morning, the Supreme Court announced it would reconvene for an emergency session to clarify the scope of its ruling and outline the constitutional limits of the outgoing administration. Legal experts warned this was unprecedented. The judiciary stepping in
the biggest democratic exercise in the history
others
of...
called it dangerous. Meanwhile, inside Labour headquarters, the battle for control intensified. Leadership campaigns turned brutal, accusations of complicity, demands for reform, calls for mass resignations. One candidate attempting to distance herself from Starmer's inner circle told reporters, "This isn't just about one man. This is about a culture that prioritised power over principle." But voters weren't buying it. Polling showed Labour's support collapsing to historic lows. In some constituencies, the party was now polling third behind the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats. The economic impact deepened. The Bank of England issued a statement urging political stability.
In the biggest democratic exercise in the history of...
experienced its sharpest single-day drop in months. International investors expressed concern about Britain's governance, and still no clear leader emerged. No solution materialised. Just more leaks, more accusations, more fear. So where does Britain stand right now? In uncharted territory. The Prime Minister is gone. The ruling party is fractured. The opposition is demanding elections. The Supreme Court is preparing to intervene again. And the palace, while silent, remains a looming presence in the background. Constitutional experts are scrambling to find precedents, but there are none. This combination of judicial rebuke, political collapse and institutional paralysis hasn't happened in modern British history. Some predict a general election within weeks. Others warn that could trigger even deeper instability. A few whisper about scenarios nobody wants to consider. Scenarios where the monarchy is forced to act, where the courts assume emergency authority, where the nation's unwritten constitution is tested to its breaking point. What's clear is this: Britain is no longer on solid ground. The foundations are cracking. Trust has collapsed. And the path forward is anything but certain. This isn't just a political crisis, it's a constitutional reckoning, a moment that will define how Britain governs itself for decades to come. And it's far from over. New leaks are emerging by the hour. Leadership battles are intensifying. The Supreme Court's next ruling could reshape the balance of power.
In the biggest democratic exercise in the history of
waiting and preparing for whatever comes next. So here's what you need to do. Subscribe to this channel right now, because this story is evolving every single day. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think this was justice or a constitutional crisis? Should there be an election or a caretaker government? I want to hear your take. And if you found this breakdown valuable, share it, because most people have no idea how deep this goes. Britain is at a crossroads, and we're going to cover every twist, every leak, every consequence as it unfolds. Stay informed, stay critical, and don't let the chaos distract you from the truth.